Hello, Jacksonites, and welcome back to my Tremors series re-review. Joining, of course, by Tremor Thomson, as he likes to be called now, I guess.
Howdy, everybody, at least in the context of reviewing these.
Today, we will be discussing the third entry in the Tremors franchise, Tremors 3 Back to Perfection. Let's just jump right into our personal history with this movie because I'm sure we both have a lot to say about it.
Yes, indeed. So I really got into Tremors and Tremors 2 back in 2000, which was the 10th anniversary of the first movie. I didn't really note that at the time, but it dawned on me later. I was watching them on recorded VHSs a lot, and so I was definitely becoming a strong Tremors fan in the year 2000. And the next year, and also I was starting to dabble on the internet a little bit, I eventually found out that they were making a Tremors 3. So I was super excited because I was getting into this franchise and there was something new on the way. And so it came out October 2001. I don't know the exact day, but Halloween time 2001. And you can tell the previews and everything.
October 2nd, 2001.
Yeah. The previews on the VHS, minus the Josie and the Pussycat trailer, was kind of catered to that. Anyway, I watched the hell out of this VHS tape that I got. It was my first bought tape for the Tremors franchise, and if anybody's seen my video about my collection, not long afterwards, I got the first and second movie on bought VHS with an actual sleeve and everything. For a long time, I just watched the hell out of Tremors 1, 2, and 3, and getting this VHS got the ball rolling. And not long into this period, because Tremors 3 kind of revived the franchise for its own little era.
Yeah.
There was also Tremors the series, which we reviewed and ranked in another video.
Yeah, well, we will not be re-reviewing the show as part of this series, because if you want that, just go over and watch our ranking video. We just give our thoughts on it there. But continue.
Indeed. So anyway, Tremors the series rolled out. I remember recording this on VHS tapes that were available off Sci-Fi. I actually still have those. The quality is starting to diminish, but it's very nostalgic seeing what the Sci-Fi channel used to look like back in 2003.
Yeah.
I miss it. So this was like my thing, watching the show, watching the first three movies, and I'll save the fourth movie's history for when we get there. But Tremors 3 was a very important part of my Tremors history, and it really kicked off a whole phase for me and for the franchise in general.
Like with Trev, I also do share a shit ton of nostalgia for Tremors 3. Because as I said, the very first one that I saw was Tremors 2. But right after that, I remember seeing a clip from Tremors 3. And I asked, what's this? And Dad said it was Tremors 3. It was a scene where I think it was El Blanco, burst out of the ground in front of Bert's compound early in the movie. And I always remembered seeing that. I was like, oh my God, what the fuck? That's the freakiest shit I've ever seen.
The
music doesn't help, no, at all. But I just remember thinking, man, what is this? And that always stuck with me. And I would catch Tremors 3 on TV all the time. I think of the entire series, Tremors 3 really has been showed on TV the absolute most. With close second being the first one, but Tremors 3 I would see put on TV all the time. So
there was a marathon. There was a marathon back in the day, whenever the show was still on air, where they did Tremors 2, 3, and I think all the episodes of the series. And I remember the spot for it. It ended with Bert's line from the end of Tremors 2, where he said, "It's going to be big, big."
Is it going to be today? Anyway, so lo and behold, at my local Blockbuster, um, they of course had Tremors movies. And the very first one that I ever rented was Tremors 3 because that one always really just stuck out to me and I really wanted to rewatch that one. So I sat down and I watched it and I fucking loved this movie. I absolutely adored this movie. And the next time I went to Blockbuster, I got 1 and then 4. So I went on a marathon there. But like I said, I was always starving for Tremors 2. So I ended up just rewatching Tremors 3 because I felt like that was the closest that I could get to Tremors 2 because the Shriekers are allegedly in this movie. So and I wanted to see the Shriekers and I want to see Tremors 2. So I would just kind of gravitate to 3 and rewatch it to try to scratch my Shrieker itch. And then it just got away from me for a long time. And before Tremors 5 came out, I was definitely one of those people that said that Tremors 3 was the weakest of the series when I got to be an older movie fan. Um, Actually, it was when Trev and I first started ever talking when I discovered that he was a Tremors fan, and he and I pretty much just agreed that, yeah, part 3 was the weakest of the series in our opinions. But then 5 and then 6 came out. And then when he and I started talking again, we at this point Tremor 6 was out, and so then we finally just found a kinship in our dislike of Tremor 6. But looking back, huh? What?
Which will probably continue. Just a preview of what's to come.
Yes. Now, looking back on Tremors 3, now that I've rewatched the movie after quite a few years, actually, I still like it. It's still a very fun movie. It's got a shit ton of nostalgia for me. Like the entire time I was watching, I was just thinking back to all those times when I rented it from my local Blockbuster and just having a total blast rewatching the movie. That being said, on the other hand, I definitely do think this still is one of the weaker installments of the entire series, but not as much as I used to. So for some reason, if we ever do a re-ranking of the Tremors franchise, this one has gone up in the series a little bit for me because I found myself really enjoying it, but there are aspects about this movie that do hinder this movie quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I will say, I think I'm the reverse. I think it's bumped down just a little bit for me. Really, 3, 4, and 7. Although I wish it was 6. 3, 4, and 7 kind of all float in the middle ground for me, where they can kind of change their position. But definitely top tier. Sorry, is 1, 2, and 5 in my opinion. If we're not counting the series. But yeah, so my based on what we said in the ranking, my ranking for 3 has bumped down just a little bit. And I will say this is probably between 3 and 4. It's I guess it's a preference thing. This is where the movie started to falter a little bit, and I would say that 3 is probably the weakest of the Stampede era, possibly. Again, it depends on how you feel about 4. But anyway, go on, Nick.
I plead the 5th.
Okay.
So let us get into the plot of Tremors 3, shall we? This movie had a slightly bigger budget than Tremors 4, having a $6 million budget. Though from what Trev said, that apparently this one had an extremely, not rushed, but a really short shooting schedule. Is that correct?
Let me go ahead and tell you how long it was, because they mention it on the neat little spotlight on location featurette they have on the Blu-ray, at least mine. The movie was shot in 22 days, and Michael Gross said it's amazing that everybody stayed friends after such a tight shooting schedule.
Damn.
Yeah.
Well, if the original Little Shop of Horrors can be shot in 4 days, then this is no problem.
Oh, whew, yeah. That's Roger Corman for you.
Yeah, but that's Roger Corman. Exactly. Exactly. And this movie is certainly not a case like Atragon, where the movie is so rushed that it hurts the movie. So but if anyone's going to say, no, I don't think this movie's rushed.
Yeah,
But
I got you.
let's get into the plot. Adventurer Burt Gummer returns to his hometown of Perfection, Nevada, after a badass scene where he guns down shriekers with an anti-aircraft cannon with some badass music at the very beginning. After a hunt for shriekers in El Chaco, Argentina, since the original graboid attacks, the town's preventative equipment for tracking graboid activities has fallen into disrepair due to the neglect of native residents Miguel, Nancy Sterngood, and her daughter Mindy. Walter Chang's market has been taken over by his niece Jody, and the town has gained a new resident, Jack, who creates mock attack tours for visiting tourists. Did they ever give us Jack's last name?
Sawyer?
So yeah, that's it, Sawyer. One afternoon, during one of Jack's tours, his assistant Buford is eaten by an actual graboid. Jack, Mindy, and Jack's customers manage to escape to warn the town, and Bert determines that there are 3 graboids in the area. The residents begin to take action to kill these graboids, but they are stopped by government agents Charlie Rusk and Frank Statler and a paleontologist, Dr. Andrew Merlis, who claim the graboids are an endangered species, preventing the humans from hunting them. Ugh. You really share Bert's frustration in this scene because it's so fucking stupid. And it's not like a flaw in the movie or anything. It's just in the context of the movie. If you were in Bert's shoes, you'd just be wanting to pull your damn hair and mustache out.
And people call me paranoid. Eminent domain.
Jack manages to reach an agreement with the agents that if they capture 1 live graboid, Bert and the residents will be allowed to kill the remaining 2. Bert begrudgingly agrees, and he and Jack set out to trap a graboid while the agents go after another out of their own accord. Melvin Plug, I do love that this movie managed to get all of its original cast back, because Melvin Plug is still played by the same little bastard who played Melvin in the first movie. A fellow survivor from the original attacks, he approaches Bert in the hopes of buying his land and developing it into a town. After Bert refuses, a graboid attacks and swallows him whole. Jack lures the graboid to Bert's home, having it fatally collide with the underground concrete barriers surrounding his building. He then uses a chainsaw to free Bert from its belly, which kind of reminds me of Phantasm 2.
Yes. Now that I've seen those.
In a scene that's very obvious that there's just a little machine that's just spurting up orange paint all over Jack as he's holding a chainsaw without its blade.
Yeah, real quick, that was actually a guy down in a hole throwing up guts at the actor. And Sean Christian was saying that he was trying to make sure the chainsaw didn't get too close to the guy's face.
Well, if they use an actual chainsaw with a blade, they're idiots.
I don't think they did, but it was probably still just a little bit dangerous.
True, yeah. Bert, Jack, Jody, and Miguel later find a badly wounded Merlis, and he explains that he and the government agents were ambushed by shriekers from the graboid that they were chasing before dying. While tracking the shriekers, an albino graboid, later named El Blanco, meaning the white one in Spanish, traps them on rocks for the night. After drawing El Blanco away, they find that the shriekers have molted their skin, becoming winged creatures capable of jet-propelled flight by lighting their own shits. Miguel, Miguel is killed by the creature, which then crashes on a metal fence, disemboweling itself. Bert realizes that chemicals in their stomachs react explosively, enabling their flight, one of them being just like pure sodium. Finding them able to carry graboid eggs, they surmise that they evolved to spread them through flight. Jody dubs the new species ass blasters. Sounds like a porno film. Meanwhile, Nancy. What?
And this is where they jump the shark.
Meanwhile, Nancy and Mindy are attacked by an ass blaster in town and hide in a freezer. Using a mattress as cover from the ass blaster's infrared vision, the group sets to Bert's house. Why can't I talk today? The group gets to Bert's house, but are forced to flee when an ass blaster attempts to break in. To keep it from multiplying like its predecessors, Bert rigs his house and his stash of MREs, meals ready to eat, to explode, killing it in the process. Shit, hang on. Shit. Hold up.
Hello?
Okay, you back?
Yes, my phone just turned off by itself. I'm so sorry.
Now you're good.
Okay.
Where was I? Oh, okay. So Bert rigs his house and his stash of MREs to explode, killing it in the process. It is only after that they learn that ass blasters do not multiply but fall asleep after eating, literally just going into a food coma. Which, judging by my giant 3-pound box of Chinese food that I ate last night, that's an actual thing. The group flees to a junkyard where they build a potato gun from everyday objects to ignite the combustible materials in the ass blasters' stomachs. After they kill 4, Bert is attacked by El Blanco and pinned down. Realizing that Bert's ultrasonic watch is repeatedly drawing El Blanco to them, Jack takes it and sticks it to the final ass blaster. El Blanco devours it, saving Bert and Jody's lives in the process, which is a pretty epic scene. In the aftermath, Nancy manages to sell a captive ass blaster while Jack pursues a romantic relationship with Jody, which literally goes butt-fuck nowhere. Depressing Mindy, who also had a crush on him, which literally goes butt-fuck nowhere. Meanwhile, Melvin tries again to approach Bert about selling his land, but Bert informs him that since El Blanco is an endangered species and illegal to hunt, and formed a mutual unspoken friendship with Bert, the residents have decided to take precautions in order to live safely alongside it, thus turning perfection into a federally protected graboid reserve and barring Melvin from developing a town. Bert then leaves Melvin standing on a rock with El Blanco circling below. Adios, Melvin! Thus ending the movie and leading right into the show. What?
Oh, I was just quoting the end there. Bert, you asshole.
You dumb son of a bitch. God, I hate you. I hate your guns. And I hate that hat.
Shit kicker.
So, how about this plot, Trev?
Oh, that was actually kind of fun because I was reading it along with you. Yeah, I'll get into this when we get to one of my pros, but this is a nice mixing and matching of one and two.
Uh-huh. As third sequels should be.
Yes.
Well, my thoughts on Tremors 3's story overall, it's I couldn't have done it any other way. It introduces a new aspect of the creatures that from an evolutionary nature animal standpoint does very much so make sense. Like, how the hell are these monsters supposed to spread a lot around the entire world? They can only run and dig through the earth so fast. What could be more? Flying. That's what could be more. Um, it's a great return to form as well because it literally comes back to perfection. There's a lot of callbacks and a lot of motifs that look very similar to the first movie. So I feel like for people who are bigger fans of the first movie, this one could probably speak to them a lot more than part two.
Maybe that's why it was also played more often on TV. Maybe Michael Gross. It was also per his request that they go back to perfection because he was quoted as saying, "So what were they fighting for in the second movie? An oil field?" Because he's very fond of the tight knit community aspect of perfection. So he requested that they go back,
which is all well and good, and it works in this movie's favor.
Yes.
Excuse me. Where the film kind of falters, however, is its production values and a couple of its returning characters, because, oi. But overall, Tremors 3 really does feel like an excellent third installment in the series. And like what Trev said, it's a good mix of 1 and 2. It's a great continuation and a great exploration of further elements of its mythology. And they don't feel like they were pulled out of somebody's ass. It again kind of feels like the Alien series with the xenomorphs. There's so many elements of the xenomorph's life cycle that we know about now that the first movie, then the second movie, and then the third movie explored more of. The first one was just the one xenomorph. The second one was more xenomorphs. And the third one introduced the idea that xenomorphs can be born from more than just a human.
And also that the egg that contains the queen chest burster, it not only has, or the face hugger, not only has one for the queen, but it also has a guard that it finds a host for too, and that particular xenomorph is supposed to watch over the queen. So,
and there you go. Anything you want to say before we get to the pros?
No, we've actually kind of given people a preview of our pros and cons, so let's get into it.
Alrighty, go right ahead. You can go first.
Number one for me is the practical effects, particularly with the ass blasters.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do with each, well, at least for these first three movies, what they do with each subsequent movie, you know, the first one focuses on the worms, obviously, because they're the original creature. Then they focus on the shriekers, and they did that also for budgetary reasons. And then with the ass blasters, they're the brand new creature for this. So obviously they get the most focus. The graboids, though, do make a good comeback in practical form.
Yes.
For the most part. Although I was thinking, and I think I've thought this for a while whenever I revisit it, that first scene when they come back and eat Buford, that's great. But then whenever it pursues everybody else, it doesn't seem as fast or aggressive as the original graboids.
Nah.
Because, you know, it should be all over the Jeep, and it should just be really trying to get all these people, but it's just the one tentacle that gets up there and tries to get them. But then, you know, again, that's a budget problem, and, you know, that's okay. But still, they have more presence in this movie, thankfully.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the shriekers get shortchanged.
Oh.
Yeah, but that, you know, that's, again, just like the Graboids were shortchanged in 2, that's because the main focus is on the new evolution. So yeah, definitely the practical effects. This was the last time Tom Woodruff Jr. and Al Gillis were involved with Tremors because K&B
Really?
took over for.
Oh, okay.
K&B took over for the show in number 4. And then I don't know who's doing the new movie, so I'll have to look that up when we get there. But yeah, the effects are for sure my number 1 pro for this, at least the practical ones. I actually don't think the CGI for the ass flashers is that bad.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. All right, so I have 6 pros, by the way. So moving right along.
I have 7. I have 7 pros and 7 cons.
Okay. All right, so moving right along, number 2 is Bert. To be honest, he could actually bump up to number 1. These are kind of interchangeable. This is where Michael Gross becomes the lead of the series.
Despite the fact throughout the entire franchise, in the credits, he's never the first name seen. It's always such and such, such and such, such and such, and Michael Gross as Bert Gummer.
Yeah. I don't know if that's some kind of union regulation or something, but, he should, except for this one, in 4, he should be top billed more often than not. But yeah, to speak to how good Bert is in this movie, at the Video Premiere Awards show in 2001, Michael Gross won the award for Best Actor for his work in this movie. So, yeah, that's
deserved.
I guess I should mention something about the music for this pro because it didn't make my pros or cons. It's just kind of there. This is the only score where I think Bert has a theme. They actually give the character a theme.
Like that trumpet theme that you hear?
Yeah. And it's honestly
that looks
pretty
suspect.
Corny. Yeah, it's honestly pretty corny, but memorable. I always think, whenever I hear that, that's Tremors 3. This is the fun fact that I wanted to bring up to you because you're a Clone Wars fan. Kevin Kiner, who did the score for Clone Wars and Rebels, did the score for this movie. So yeah, that's a neat little piece of trivia. But Bert, it stands to reason. This is where we found out that he is the mainstay of the franchise. And as we saw, he kept on coming. Tremors, really, it's hard to say if it's a thing without Bert after this. So,
nah.
I would say that he defines the franchise going forward from here. And really, if you watch the first 2 movies, he stands out. You're like, this survivalist guy. He's pretty memorable. So yeah, he's definitely either pro 1 or 2. As of this writing out, it was 2. So yeah, I'm sure Nick will get into more about Bert. So all right, pro number 3. I actually mentioned this already, but I'll kind of elaborate slightly. Pro number 3 is the mixing of 1 and 2. I think what excited me the most about this movie, and still does to an extent, even though the budget kind of holds it back, is the fact that we get to see characters from the first movie interact with elements that were introduced in 2. In other words, the cast of the original movie who survived, they get to find out what a shrieker is. Stuff like that. It's just this neat
vaguely.
Okay, so these people didn't see this in the original movie, but now this has happened since then, and we're catching up with them. And it's just the whole idea that, as we find out, we have 3 monsters that we have to worry about, all connected to each other, obviously, but they have different levels of threat. The Graboids are still have their variation of threat. The Shriekers have their own variation of threat. It just makes the plot very interesting. It's like, okay, we have to do this before this happens. And unfortunately, government interference is what causes things to go. But that also helps the plot progress.
It does, yeah.
So for me, as any good third movie should, this is a good mix of 1 and 2, and it's still one of the best parts about it. Pro number 4, and it's odd that I singled him out this time around, is Miguel. Tony Gennaro, I believe is the actor's name.
Yes.
Of the returning cast and his character, he seems to be the most ready to go. The most,
yes.
Yeah, he doesn't cause any. I mean, he doesn't maintain his preparation.
But he's at Bert's side at all times, trying to fix the problems.
Yes, and even though he's never encountered Shriekers before, for instance, whenever they show up, he's like, okay, what do we need to do to get rid of these guys?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just found that very admirable, and it actually helps, spoiler alert, in making his death at least somewhat impactful.
Yes.
It is sad. It is sad. So, yeah, I singled him out because, unfortunately, I don't, my cons factor into the rest of the returning cast, unfortunately. So Miguel, yeah, Miguel is my pro number 4. Pro number 5 is Jack. He starts off being annoying, as he's supposed to.
Yeah, it's true.
But about midway through, he gets on the ball, and he's just kind of funny. It's whenever watching these as a kid, my parents said that Jack and then Tyler were kind of like a Kevin Bacon substitute.
Yeah.
Which I can kind of see. But Jack and Tyler are still their own unique characters. I'm not going to get into Tyler too much because we already did. But Jack is kind of that. It's what Grady wanted to be at the end of Tremors 2, that kind of tour guide, kind of theme park dude.
But the fake version.
Yeah, the fake version, a con artist. He's a con artist, is what he is to start out with. And he also just has a real interesting, a lot of zingers that, you know, annoy the characters, but it just kind of makes the characters stand out. It's like, oh, Jack has this saying that's going to apply to the situation.
Universe provides.
That's right.
Which I can't tell. Is he putting on a fake accent, or is that just how he talks?
He is, because Sean Christian is Canadian.
Oh, okay. So I'm just gonna get my brief thoughts on. Hang on, let me throw some. Look at something here. Okay, no, never mind. So I'll get my brief thoughts on Miguel and Jack right now because they're not in my they're not in my pros or cons. But I'll just get my brief thoughts. Yeah, I like Miguel. I like that he's the one who's the most gung ho when it comes to dealing with the graboids and ass blasters. Well, Shriekers specifically, but like, yeah, I like that he pretty much becomes Bert's right-hand man. Mostly, I feel like just because, you know, they know each other and they've experienced graboids before. And yeah, he let his stuff go to disrepair, but he recognizes that there's a problem, partially because he's a cattle rancher. He's looking after his herd, but also this is where he lives. He's looking after his home. So he develops a kinship with Bert, which I think is really nice. It's just a shame that he dies. And as for Jack, yeah, at first he's annoying as fuck. But he gets better in the second half of the movie. Like, specifically once the ass blasters show up is when he starts becoming really, really tolerable. Like some of his dialogue is kind of funny, and like he starts to pull out of his bullshit con artist shell, and he just starts to want to help Bert and Jody kill off these creatures. And some of his dialogue is kind of funny. Like, one of my favorite moments of the whole movie. But do we have a lighter? Bert does. How do you know? Well, you're Bert. Damn right I am. So yeah, I don't mind him in the second half of the movie, but in the first half, he's insufferable. But I know that's the point. So good writing and acting on their parts. Back to your pros.
Yeah, and also one last note, particularly about the actor Sean Christian. He just eats up being a part of the franchise. And he said in the Spotlight on Location featurette that whenever he did the movie and he talked to friends about it, he said, oh, yeah, I'm doing a Tremors movie. Everybody got excited whenever he mentioned it.
It looks like he's having fun.
Yeah, so it shows that even though it never became mainstream, the Tremors franchise still has quite a following. So, so pro number 6 and the last pro, actually Nick kind of got into it. We were sharing some, the quotes and the humor. This is where the franchise really takes the stance that we're more comedy than horror. I mean, that shows in the name Ass Blasters, which is still something that is contentious for some people. And to be fair, it is kind of one of those things you're like, yeah, and Ass Blasters. And people look at you like, what?
Oh, definitely Sean Christian is way much more of a TV actor than he is a movie actor. Because I'm looking through his filmography from 1994 to current. He's been in a lot of TV shows where he's only been in maybe a dozen movies.
Yeah. Well, that actually became kind of a trend, starting with this period of Tremors and moving. Well, actually, in this period of Tremors, a lot of TV stars became involved with the franchise. So, yeah, we're probably going to, again, it's one of those things where I can't think of them like right whenever I'm talking about it, but as we do the review, we share them. There's just all the, particularly the Stampede movies. Eventually, I'm sure the newest movies, the quotes will begin to become memorable, but they're fresh, so that's why.
So then why is the needle on my bullshit meter still in the red?
There's that, and also the great kind of the Zinzinger. Whenever the sun rises in Africa, you better be running. There's that. Yeah, so anyway, the quotes, basically the entire Stampede Entertainment era of Tremors. These movies have tons of quotes, and they are funny. That's one of the things that defines the franchise, is that, it has its horror elements, or at least the first two, as we were saying. But you'll definitely laugh at some point in all these movies.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, those are my pros.
Alrighty, so I have 7 pros. Pro number 1 is Burt Gummer. God damn, this is when classic, pinnacle Burt Gummer is finally morphed into its fullest shape. The paramilitary paranoids, kind of slightly asshole-ish conspiracy theorist, badass wannabe military dude who he annoys you, but you just can't help but love him. This is when he takes full shape, and God, is it glorious. He's so fun to watch, steals the show in any scene that he's in. Like, this is what really feels like Burt's movie. And this is the first one that feels like it's a Burt vessel. And it's freaking awesome. And it definitely does show that Michael Gross was given top billing in this movie because, let's be honest, he's the most interesting character in the whole franchise. And it's a great progression that's moved into Tremors the series, and especially in Tremors 5, because that kind of seems like where it just reaches its peak of craziness. But yeah, Burt is fucking awesome in this movie. Pro number 2 is all the monster action in this movie is very, very entertaining. This movie definitely does move at a very brisk pace. It never really slows down and gets boring. There's always just one monster scene after another. You have the shootout with the Shriekers in the beginning, then the Graboid eating Buford, then the Graboid eating Burt, and then cutting open the Graboid and saving Burt. The stranding of El Blanco, the very first appearance of the Ass Blaster, the Ass Blaster Kamikaze, and the whole junkyard scene. There's lots of monster action scenes in this movie. So if that's what you're looking for, this movie's definitely got you covered. It's all very well done. It's very entertaining. It's well paced, and it never gets old. Pro number 3 is the music. I love the fucking music in this movie. It's very much like badass action movie music, and it's very thrilling when it needs to be. It's a little creepy and slow when the movie's trying to be a little suspenseful, like when the first Graboid bursts out in front of Burt's compound. Like, that scene's kind of spooky and eerie. The opening music, huh?
The Shrieker skin scene, that's a little creepy.
That one too is a little eerie. The opening theme when we see the title, I fucking love that. It totally sets the tone for the rest of the movie. And Bert's military trumpet theme, yeah, it's a little corny, but I love it. That is definitely Bert's theme as far as I'm concerned.
Well, there you go, and it's also the composer also did something else you love too. So there you
TCW.
go.
Overall, I absolutely love this movie's score. I think it might actually be my favorite musical score of the whole series. There is also Tremors 4, so that's a little debatable. But yeah, I love this movie's score. Pro number 4 is the ingenuity that's utilized in trying to kill all these monsters. This kind of does spawn from a problem that I have with this movie, which I'll explain to when I get to my cons. But the ingenuity of this movie, once again, this franchise has a really good track record of it's kind of like the A-Team a little bit. They always make monsters out, or not make monsters. They make weapons out of bullshit to kill monsters.
Yeah.
Although it's not nearly as bad as the A-Team because nobody dies in the A-Team, but the ingenuity on how to kill various monsters in this movie is it's really clever. Like specifically creating the potato gun, which is pretty much just a cannon. A literal hand cannon, because that's what the general concept of a cannon is. A cannon is a giant tube where you put in a whole bunch of gunpowder, then you put in that cannonball, and in that little hole, you light the fuse, and as soon as the fuse goes in there, the shit ignites, and it expels the projectile. Same thing with this potato gun that they use from a pipe, a shitty little, everybody has seen one of these, a shitty little metal hose nozzle, and they put in some whiskey, they put in the flaming arrow, and they light the touch hole. Boom! There goes the arrow. It's literally just a cannon. But it's
on Wikipedia, whenever you were reading the plot synopsis, they have a potato gun as a link, and it links to what you're just talking about, although it's called the potato cannon on the actual page.
Is a pipe-based cannon which uses air pressure or combustion of a flammable gas to launch projectiles at high speeds. They are built to fire chunks of potato as a hobby or to fire other sorts of projectiles for practical use. And these things are excellent like survivalist weapons because they literally can just be made out of any kind of pipe. I don't think plastic ones apply, so don't get that in your head. But yeah, the ingenuity in this movie is pretty good. And they also they show that they're capable of thinking on their feet, using a boat and a downhill slope to escape danger, using an air mattress to hide their body heat. Well, not an air mattress, but it's a mattress. And using a refrigerator to topple it over and crush an ass blaster. It's fun. It's good to show that, or it's good showing that the characters know how to think on their feet.
Well, you could also say, excuse me, ingenuity is just a pro of the whole Tremors series, or at least the early films.
Yes.
So,
Pro number 5 is all the callbacks to the first Tremors movie. Obviously, like we said, they managed to get all of the original cast back for this movie. And overall, this movie definitely does feel a lot like the original Tremors movie. Obviously, because they go back to perfection. Like, you see a lot of familiar locations, a lot of motifs. Like, you see Nestor's trailer, which you always wondered, what happened to Nestor's trailer? Oh, it's at the junkyard. Okay. And they mentioned that... Huh?
He loved his shine.
Yeah. An old friend Nestor was killed in the first grab one incursion. His trailer ended up here. He loved his shine. Overall, like, if you're a big fan of the first Tremors movie and you want something else that's very similar, this movie is right up your alley. And once again, it goes to show that the excellent use of continuity in this series. I can't think of any major flubs in the entire Tremors franchise. I think the Tremors series has one of the tightest and strongest continuities of any franchise out there.
Yeah.
That's not an extra pro. That just is something that is praiseworthy about the franchise. Is its really tight continuity. Pro number 6 is the Ass Blasters. Now, I have one major issue with them, which I'll get into with the pros, but overall, I love their design. Like I said with Tremors 2, I like that each stage of the Graboid life cycle is not just like a carbon copy of, it's not the same thing, it just looks different. Each stage has its own niche that it fills. The Graboids are the lone powerhouse hunters. Shriekers are the small but quick, great in numbers pack hunters. Ass blasters are like big giant birds of prey. They can go long distances. They can do aerial recon. They can blow you to smithereens with its shit stinking launch residue. And they can still tear you to pieces just like shriekers. And they also fill a necessary evolutionary role in that they're the egg carriers, and that's how they spread their species across vast quantities of land. So, in terms of the franchise, I really couldn't think of any other way that they were executed. And I like that once again they drew inspiration from real animals because ass blasters are very similar to a species of beetle known as the bombardier beetle. Bombardier beetles are able to fire a hot stream of farts from their ass by combining various chemicals in their ass. Though with bombardier beetles, it's a little different. They don't use it to fly. They have wings. They can fly on their own accord. They use it as a defense mechanism. Like if something approaches them, they'll literally stand up and tuck their ass underneath them and shoot it at them. Or if they end up in a predator's mouth, they just fart and they spit them out. It either burns their skin or it just tastes like shit. So yeah, I like that they drew inspiration from real life animals, and overall, I love the ass blasters. Still, my least favorite form of the graboids, but they're still cool nonetheless. They're a good monster, despite one massive problem I do have with them.
Well, and to add to that, oh no, go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
Oh, I was just gonna say my last pro, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, well on that note, really there's nowhere else to go with the creatures except for redesign or different environments after this point, which is what they did. So,
or if you wanted to have like a swimming variant, which that would have been kind of cool.
Yeah, but at the same time you're thinking, well, what purpose other than conquering all the different elements would that have? Because if you think about it, like they say, the ass blaster, it's in the air now, but that also carries the egg as far as possible. So,
true. Yeah. And so my pro number 7 is the practical special effects in this movie are really fucking good. I don't know whether to say that they're better than the previous movie, but they do look a lot more refined. Like they don't look quite as like you see a moving and much more nimble and maneuverable animatronic ass blaster that looks really really good. The animatronic graboid puppet looks really really good too. All the monster gore and the guts and blood all looks really cool. The split open graboid when they save Bert looks fucking awesome. Like that looks so gross and nasty, and it looks. And Michael Gross said that being inside that thing was a pain in the butt. It was cold, it was claustrophobic, and it was uncomfortable. Yeah, exactly. So he was able to. Huh?
It felt like being in a coffin, which is ironically kind of foreshadowing things, but
Yep, I just now realized that. You're right.
Now, that's the first thing I thought of watching that little featurette. Wow, this has a different context now.
Yep. Overall, not much to say about the practical special effects other than that they look really, really, really solid. Again, I don't know whether to say that they're. No, I'll just say I think they're a little bit better than the previous movie, only because we do see a bit more of them and that they look much more refined in the previous movie. Because this had a $2 million increase in budget, I think that allowed them to play around with a little bit more money and make stuff a little bit better, and we could see a little bit more good stuff. So yeah, amazing special effects in this movie. And they get even better in the next movie.
All right, so
the cons.
4 cons.
Oh,
Yeah, 4. Only 4, but you know me, I kind of lump several things together. Con number 1 is the graboid CGI, particularly with El Blanco because he's the only CGI graboid. The Shrieker stuff doesn't bother me, although it is kind of a little iffy in some shots in the beginning of the movie. Although overall, it's still really cool. I like whenever the rounds make an impact.
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that the anti-aircraft cannon scene. Oh my God! You finally get in the situation where Bert has exactly what he wants to gun down a whole herd of Shriekers, a fucking machine gun anti-aircraft cannon, and it's awesome. He just fucking guns down all these motherfuckers, and it's so fucking cool. And it looks like Michael Gross was having the fucking time of his life shooting that fucking thing, which I believe in real life they only shot like 20 rounds, in which they blew through them just like just like that. But fucking hell, it's so cool. And again, it looks like Michael Gross is having the time of his life shooting that thing. It's so fun and it's so awesome. It's like, whoa, what a way to start a movie.
And for once, I have the proper tool at hand.
Yep. Looking for a little heat.
Indeed. Any questions?
So the graboid CGI.
Yeah, graboid CGI. Sadly, not a great debut for El Blanco. For one thing, he also has orange tentacles for the CGI model, and the practical ones are albino, like they're supposed to be. You only see the tentacles briefly whenever he traps them on the rocks, and they come out and go back in, but they're orange.
Yep.
The series has this problem, too, where sometimes El Blanco looks brown, and he is supposed to look white. It's the CGI model.
Yep.
Again, it's weird. But anyway, yeah, that's definitely something that doesn't look great. The only exception I'll give for this CGI, because again, like I said, I think the Ass Blasters look fine. I think they actually look a little bit better than the Shriekers in 2. They definitely interact with their environment better.
Yeah.
But then again, it's still low-budget CGI, so it's not going to be for everybody. The only exception I'll give for El Blanco is basically where he's used as a
Deus Ex Machina T-Rex from Jurassic Park.
Yeah, you just took the words right out of my mouth. He's like the Mosasaur in Jurassic World. He basically finishes off the last enemy, or the last Ass Blaster, or in general, the last enemy monster.
So which, by the way, I will say something about Jurassic World. The Mosasaur in real life was not that large.
No, but that's also just like how the Velociraptors weren't that big either.
True, yeah.
Because those are technically Deinonychus, but I digress.
Or Utahraptors, but yeah, continue.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, nothing much to say about that aside from it's not great here, it's not great in the series. Graboids are just better if they're full size or miniature practical. Well,
yes.
Actually, sorry, I should say they look fine in the new movies.
Yes.
They also have better CGI, so there's that.
Yes.
Con number 2, not all of the returning cast is great. As you saw from my
fuck.
As you saw from my pros, I singled out Miguel because I liked him. I liked his return. But no, the Stern Goods, Nancy and Mindy.
Specifically Nancy.
Yes. She was like this in the first movie, but it's worse here because she is what she calls the government. They
Yep.
show up, and that is why we end up getting shriekers, which we want to see shriekers or we want them to be involved in some way. But still, in terms of like if this was a real situation, she just kind of screwed them over potentially, and almost did. So really, that's Nancy's problem in a nutshell. And I said this in the series. I thought Marcia Strassman actually did a better job as the character.
Yes.
She definitely gave her more layers as a character, but then she also had more time to do so. No offense to Charlotte Stewart, but that's just my opinion. And then Mindy, Ariana Richards, who was also in the first movie and Jurassic Park. Unfortunately, in this movie, she is basically just a big teenage girl cliche.
She's not like detrimental to the characters like her mother is, but yeah, she is pretty much a teenage stereotype, and it's really annoying.
Well, it is cool that she has that cool thing about sequels where characters come back and they've been through this before, and so they use that experience to, do whatever they do in this new movie.
Yeah, it's true.
It's nice that you can tell, oh, okay, they've been through this, so they're going to have an advantage now. I don't know why. I don't think Jack is really old enough or young enough to be a potential love interest for her. So it was always funny at the end when she said older women whenever.
See, I never really understood that until I read the plot for this movie. I didn't know that she had, well, I kind of figured she had a boner for Jack, but I never got the sense that she was depressed about Jack running off with Jody. I just kind of figured like she saw that there was something between those two, so she was just like older women. But whatever.
Yeah. And anyway, that also factors into her teenageness, is that pretty much anything her crush does is the best thing somebody could do. Much to the detriment of Buford sitting there, which that scene was actually kind of creepy, to be honest. It seemed like he was about to
do something. Yeah. You don't enjoy my company, huh? A man could take offense at that. Thunk.
Boom. Hey, the graboid saved the day.
Yep.
Probably. So yeah. Anyway, it's those three, and like I said, Miguel is the best who come back. Oh no, I'm sorry. I almost forgot Melvin. But unfortunately, the character has just progressed into something worse than what he was in the first movie. Instead of a teenage kid, who, by the way, the filmmakers said that part of Melvin's problem is that his parents were always away, like at Vegas or something, gambling and whatnot. So he was always left at the house by himself. Apparently, that's some nice little background they added there. Anyway, he goes from an annoying teenager, and now he's a realtor trying to develop the valley. And of course, we see more of this for at least 2 episodes in Tremors the series. But yeah, Melvin's he's definitely become more antagonistic. Still irritating. He's still a little turd.
Yeah.
No bigger. But yeah, it stands through. Well, it speaks to the fact that I almost forgot about him, that he's probably the worst
utilized.
Worst off. Yeah, worst utilized or worst off from the 11 years that have happened since the first movie. You're like, unfortunately, he just got worse as a character. But at the end, he does have that really funny moment. So
you asshole!
Shit kicker.
I think he still has a lisp.
Yeah, I think that's just a Robert Jane problem. Or maybe it's just Melvin, I don't know. But, okay, so anyway, yeah, the returning cast...
I say that because the first time he shows up, it sounds like he's supposed to be saying, long time no see. But it sounds like he's saying, long time no she.
Yeah, okay, so you're right. So that's probably an embellishment that the actor added, but... And again, no offense to him. It's just that the character isn't likable.
Not at all.
Yeah. Okay. So moving right along, con number 3, unfortunately, is Jody. So whatever you might have found irritating about Walter Chang, Jody turns it up to probably about 10 or 11.
12.
And it, yeah, 12, yeah. And she's just, that's constantly what she's thinking about for most of the movie. Although, like Jack, she goes through an arc where she does realize that maybe she needs to loosen up a little bit.
Yes, that is good. Yeah. She gets better once the second half of the third act rolls around. Like, she starts to like get involved with trying to eradicate the problem in the film. But yeah, in the first 2/3, she's insufferable. I'll get to that later.
Yeah, and I'll let you go with that. My final note will be that thankfully, and again, no offense to Susan Chang, or Chuang, I believe is her name, but Leela Lee from the series was the better version, again, of Jody.
Still annoying.
So yeah, still annoying, but not as much, in my opinion. Okay, so final con number 4.
Wait a minute.
What? What's up?
Was that Michael Gross's mom?
No, it's his sister.
Or his sister? Why did I say mom? I'm looking. Her character's listed here as tourist mom. That was his sister. I'll be damned.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We got another piece of trivia out there. Mind blown. Okay, so last con number 4, and it's funny because you said this actually had a slight increase from Tremors 2's budget. My last con is this is the first time the budget constraints that are common for the rest of the series from this point on, this is the first time they are noticeably a problem in the way the film looks. And, okay, so the 2, 3, and 4 actually have the same director of photography, Virgil L. Harper. And you can kind of tell whenever you're watching all 3 together, you can tell it's the same guy shooting it, but this looks the most cheap. As Nick has said before, this looks like a TV movie.
I'll get to that later.
Which helps it be like the pilot for the show even more. And really, this is probably more of a nitpick than anything, but it is noticeable. I think this was, until A Cold Day in Hell, the cheapest looking Tremors movie.
Oh. Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there.
With that being said, it still does better than that movie did. But more on that later. So yeah, I'm not going to get too far into it, but yes, this is the first time that you can tell that there's constraints with their budget. So yeah, that's my last con.
Okay, so con number 1 for me. This is kind of a nitpick, but there's quite a bit of stock footage in this movie. There's a lot of recycled shots of the graboids going under the ground, and a lot of dirt humps, and a lot of like POV underground graboids tunneling through the earth. And there's even one scene when the graboid shows up to surprise Melvin and Bert. It's literally a recycled shot from when Stumpy surprised Val and Earl at the end of the first movie, but they just redubbed it with a much less intimidating roar than it was in the first film.
Less screechy. It's more guttural.
It's more like a oh. So it's not a huge issue, and it's nothing like Phantasm 4, for example. But when I because I watched Tremors 3 before I watched the first movie, I would recognize a lot of these shots in the first film. So I was like, wait, no, duh, of course, this came before Tremors 3. So Tremors 3 stole a whole bunch of shots from this movie. And this leads into a problem that I have with this movie that you can probably guess what it is, but I'll just bear with me. I'll get to it. Con number 2 is the lack of shriekers. Now, I did just find out that due to software compatibility problems, the Shrieker CGI from the second film could not be used again, which could be why they weren't used very much in this movie. And while I understand that it was to put more focus on the ass blasters, because like with the second movie, the Graboids weren't in it that much because the Shriekers were the focus. Sadly, because the ass blasters are the focus, but it's also a return to form because it's going back to perfection. So the Graboids are back. Unfortunately, the Shriekers kind of get the short end of the stick. And for me, because I'm a Shriekers fan, that sticks out like a sore thumb for me because it feels like, well, the Graboids get their shine, and obviously the Ass Blasters get their shine. What about the Shriekers? What the fuck?
Well, at least they made up for it in Night of the Shriekers.
So. Yeah, so if you keep the show in mind, Night of the Shriekers and Shriek and Destroy do somewhat make up for that, but purely in the movies, we don't really see Shriekers full bore again until part 7.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating. Con number 3 is the lack of gun action. Like with part 2, they show off that Bert once again has this giant collection of weapons, and they all get blown the fuck up. This does lead into the good ingenuity for killing off the monsters, but still, it just feels like the filmmakers were holding back on giving us some no holds barred, mow them down with guns action like in the first movie. Again, if you keep the show in mind, we do get some of that, and also if because like I said, it does give way to the good ingenuity for killing the monsters, but still, it's a little frustrating. They have all these guns at their disposal, but it kind of seems like the filmmakers were intentionally keeping them from using their weapons.
Well, and also point out, I don't know if this factored in at all. Michael Gross, excuse me, Michael Gross isn't. It sounds like he's not necessarily anti-gun, but he has problems with gun violence, which is actually funny because Sigourney Weaver's like that too with Ripley. That's why she kind of raised concerns during those movies. But I don't think that necessarily factored in. It was just something that he mentioned on the little making of featurette. He says that he's thankful that they never turn guns on other people, that it's always other creatures.
That, I don't necessarily I don't think that's like subtext or anything. I think that's just a coincidence, but that is something to take note of.
I think it's a budget thing, really, is what it amounted to.
Con number 4. Oh, like with Phantasm 2. Con number 4 is the annoying characters in this movie. The worst is Nancy, because she's literally the one who is 100% detrimental to the character's survivability. She's the one who calls in the government and fucks everybody over with potentially dealing with these monsters. She's the one who inadvertently leads to the Shriekers coming around. Because if they had just let Bert do his thing, could have avoided the whole movie.
Yeah.
But then again, they could have just said, if they were to do that and let Bert do his thing, they could have allowed just another Graboid that took too late to hatch to show up and then give birth to Shriekers. So then we would have had our movie. But that's beside the point. Yeah, Nancy's the one who fucks over everybody. She's the one who inadvertently kills off Miguel, destroys part of the store, kills the government agents, and lets the Shriekers morph into ass blasters. She's the one who is the cause of all the problems in this movie. Fuck Nancy. Yes, Mindy is a teenage stereotype, and it is pretty annoying, and like all of her bitching and moaning and teenage whining does get annoying after a while. But I didn't really get the sense that she wasn't trying to be like her mom. She was trying to be proactive in the movie and trying to help people out, and she does a couple times. Like she's the one who first throws off the hot ham for the ass blaster to eat. And she's also the one that allows Bert and company to escape El Blanco by blaring her shitty rock music over the walkie-talkie. But, and also Jody. The first 2/3 of the movie, she's so goddamn annoying. Give me money. Give me ways to make more money. Give me more ways to capitalize on these monsters. Give me this. Give me that. Give me that. Complain, 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 complain. But then the third act, she redeems herself. She starts trying to help, and she's also the one that she provides the earrings for how she puts the final finishing touch on the potato gun. So that's all well and good. And she also kills 2 ass blasters on her own. One with locking one of the ass blasters inside a container full of gasoline, which they could have used. Just for the record, they found the shine, yeah, but they could have used that shit. And she also shoots the other ass blaster through the skylight.
Oh, I'll also add one of my favorite lines from the whole movie. She constantly says, "It's in the comic books." You know,
which, by the way,
those
I want to fucking read those comics. They show that there's Graboid comics put out by Dark Horse, Shrieker comics put out by Dark Horse, and Graboids versus Shrieker comics. I kind of feel that may have been a reference to Alien versus Predator.
Yes, I do think it was. And you can find those pieces of art on Google by themselves.
So then they have the Graboids versus Shriekers comics. I want to fucking read those comics. God damn. Gimme. Gimme. Gimme.
Unfortunately, I think they were just covers
as
props. Yeah, but they look cool.
Yeah, Jodie's fucking annoying in the first 2/3 of this movie. She gets better in the third act, but damn. So let's see. I lost track. Shit. 1, 2, 3.
Last one was the characters.
Okay, con number 5 is the bad CG. Oh, Christ. The worst is the Graboids. The CGI on the Graboids in this movie is terrible. It gets better in the show, partially because they're much more accurate to what Graboids look like in the show. Here, they just look like miniature sandworms from Dune because they lack the spikes on the sides of their body. And they're also completely gray. They just kind of look like one gray tube. And they look so cartoony. And the orange tentacles look ridiculous. They just look like literally orange mini tongues. Yeah, they look super smooth too, which is not accurate to what Graboids look like. They're really rough and their hide's really leathery and scaly. They just look too smooth, too cartoony, too gray, and too boring. Huh?
The spines are missing.
Yep, that too. Which the series puts back in, which is cool. Yeah, the CGI Graboids in this movie just look terrible. Now, the CG models for the ass blasters don't look bad. They're obviously very early 2000s CGI models. My main issue with them is that whenever they are on screen, it's really obvious that they're also on a composite shot or a green screen as well, because their backgrounds never move. Like, they just look like static images. The worst is when the ass blasters, like, when they crush the one ass blaster with the fridge, they look and see the 3 or 4 remaining ass blasters fly towards them. It's very obvious the background is like a static image. And also when they fire that last flaming arrow at the last ass blaster and it ducks, when the arrow hits the ground, the fire just kind of has a looped flicker. So it's very obvious that the CG models were put on static images or on green screens and such, and they stick out like a sore thumb. But the CGI models for the ass blasters, they don't look bad. They're fairly well detailed. And they look just a little bit better than the CGI models for the Shriekers in the second movie, obviously. They definitely move a lot smoother, and they look more convincing as living creatures. But the CG is still very early 2000s, which gives it a slight pass because it could be worse, but it also could be way better. So yeah, the CGI work in this movie is pretty bad. Con number 6 is, yes, this movie very much so looks and feels like a TV movie. It looks like a Sci-Fi Channel original movie. Now, as a pilot for the Sci-Fi TV series, it works. You may as well just call it a 14th episode of the show. But as a direct-to-video movie, this doesn't even have a direct-to-video look. Tremors 2 had a direct-to-video look, but it had a good direct-to-video look. Here, because it's direct-to-video, the fact that it looks like a TV movie really sticks out like a sore thumb and makes this movie look a lot cheaper. Now, it's nothing like fucking Phantasm Ravager. Why are we talking about Phantasm a lot?
Because they're similar, it seems like.
It's nothing like Phantasm Ravager by any means, but yeah, this movie really does look like a TV movie. Now, it's charming because it makes you nostalgic for that era of sci-fi, but still, in the context of the series, it makes this movie stick out a little bit like a sore thumb because of how cheap it looks. Well, until a cold day in hell rolls around.
Yeah. Also, I might add, and I forgot to say this for 2, 2 was actually delayed slightly because whenever the film was done, they were so impressed with it that there was a little bit of a renewed debate of whether it should be distributed theatrically. And it actually did have a limited run, like for its premiere. But overall, it was mainly a direct-to-video title. But it was delayed. It was going to come out in '95. And actually, if you watch the credits, that's what the copyright is '95. But it was delayed slightly because they were like, "Hey, we might give this a chance and put this in theaters." But we know how that ran. So anyway.
Yep. And finally, con number 7 for Tremors 3 is, while the ass blasters are cool, I don't find them threatening. I really don't. I don't find them to be nearly as scary as Shriekers or Graboids. I really feel like you can handle an ass blaster pretty well if you just grab it by its jaws, put all your weight onto it, and just grab a knife and stab the shit out of it.
Well, it also doesn't help that we never see anybody directly killed by one.
True.
Miguel is knocked off the cliff by it, and maybe the scratches contributed a little bit to the gore that's in there. But yeah, they don't really kill anybody.
No, that really doesn't help either. Yeah, I agree. I just don't find them nearly as scary as Graboids and Shriekers. I know in theory they would be, but we never see it. Even in Tremors the series, all we see is the aftermath, a bloody foot.
Yeah.
Oh, and a bloody lower torso. So I will say that the ass blasters are a little more threatening in the show, but still, I don't find the ass blasters nearly as threatening or scary.
Yeah.
And
they
have a great design, and they have a great evolutionary role, and they're still cool monsters, but not as scary. So, anything else to add?
No, I still really like Tremors 3 in spite of these cons. But I do think this is where the series probably started to falter.
A little bit.
The original.
A little bit. It's not like a serious downgrade, but yeah, I definitely agree. This is when the series started to get a little shaky.
And again, still, to Stampede's credit, they didn't hit rock bottom like I thought they almost did with a later entry. And you probably, listeners probably know what we're talking about because we've actually name dropped it already. But yeah, anyway, I still really like Tremors 3. I would say, can I go ahead and give my rating?
Yeah, go ahead.
I would probably give this a 6 or 7 out of 10.
Oh, damn. It's getting way lower than mine. So overall, I do really still enjoy Tremors 3. Yes, it is the point where the series started to falter just a little bit, but well, it doesn't help that this movie was rushed. But um, despite its flaws and despite the fact that it was showing signs of faltering a little bit, I have a shit ton of nostalgia for this movie. I had a blast rewatching it, and I do think it is still a very good movie, which is why I'll be giving it a solid 8 out of 10. It's a fun movie. It's got a lot of problems, but I like it, so who cares? So,
Well said.
not really gonna plug anything because in a few hours from now, Trev and I will be back to give you our Tremors 4 review because I got a shit ton of free time today, so I may as well make the best of it. So look forward to that. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button, and share this video with your friends. And as always, if you see a giant, what looks like a big bird running, flying towards you with fire coming out of its ass, run. And I will see you guys in the next video, if it'll end.